Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be covering a very important story that, of course, affects not only us but people all around the world. And of course, it has impacted the lives of people for many years and decades. The issue of terrorism and the issue of Islamophobia and intolerance and extremism is, of course, rampant all over the world. We've seen in just a recent incident in Afghanistan that Daesh has claimed responsibility for attacking a Sikh temple in Kabul that has killed at least 2 people and injured many others. And this, of course, has happened apparently in retaliation to the statements that have come out from the BJP with regards to the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. That, of course, hurts the Muslim sentiment around the world and particularly in the Arab world as well. But we know that since the Taliban have come into power, there has been a spike in terrorist activities, not just in Afghanistan, but also in Pakistan as well. And the threat of Daesh is something that Pakistan is also dealing with. Then again, we also are trying to deal with the security challenges that already exist at home, also with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and the kind of activities that emerge from the Afghan soil as well, for which, of course, we have been talking to the Taliban regime that is currently in power in Afghanistan. So we'll try and take a look at the way the situation is evolving at the moment, the way the Taliban regime has to overcome both the issue of terrorism at home and then, of course, across the border as well. In a similar development, we've also seen that the kind of statements that have come about from the BJP, of course, are something that are not just restricted to India, and we've seen Islamophobic activities and hate speech all around the world as well. And that too is also not restricted to just Islam, but is a matter of concern to everyone around the world if there is any sort of speech that incites violence and hatred. And this has been something that has been discussed in a high-level UN meeting where the OSCE has called for outlawing willful religious provocations and any incitement to hate and violence. And they've also, of course, condemned what has happened in the BJP with regards to the statements that have come out or any sort of hate speech around the world that exists in terms of any other religion or belief or calls for violence toward any particular community. This, of course, is a matter of great concern, not just for the campaign of Islamophobia, but then, of course, to basic freedoms that people must have around the world. So we're going to take a look at that as well with regards to what needs to be done and the kind of challenges that exist. For this and more, I've been joined in the studios, as always, by Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. And we've been joined online by guest Brigadier Saad Mohammed, who has served as a defense attaché in Kabul. And we've also been joined by Mr. Tariq Farhadi, who's an Afghan affairs expert. And it's been a while since we've seen you, Mr. Tariq, so welcome back to the debate. We will begin the conversation with the attack in Kabul by Daesh that has claimed responsibility. And I'll start with you, Mr. Farhadi. When we look at the situation, of course, this is something that we've discussed before, the kind of challenges that exist for the Taliban regime. And whatever sort of justification or rationale that is given, it is, of course, an attack on a particular community and one that must be condemned. Mr. Farhadi?
It must be condemned indeed, because the Sikhs have lived in Afghanistan for 400 years. There are more Afghans than many other Afghans. The Sikhs, I mean. They have been there for 400 years, and in a book called the Babur Nama in 1504, they are mentioned that when he has gone to Afghanistan, he has seen Sikhs and Hindus actually in Kabul and Ghazni and Kandahar. So it's really their land. Unfortunately, we had a large exodus of the Sikhs out of Afghanistan over the past 20, 30 years. In 1970, we had 200,000 Sikhs. In 2016, we only had 7,000. The attacks really started by Daesh as of 2018, and now there's only 156. And India apparently hadn't given them visas. And these people were calling on Canada, UK, and the United States to give them visas to leave. But India has been slow, and now they're giving them electronic visas. this is on this thing. And of course, it was a soft target. We're dealing with a very difficult environment for the entire Islamic world. Politicians use religion for politics, especially in India, and they make inflammatory comments. People are very focused on the social media and get sentimental about things that they shouldn't be getting sentimental. Those politicians that make those kind of comments about the religion of Islam or the Prophet, peace be upon him, are doing it for political reasons. They collect popularity within their own communities. But in our countries, it creates propitious situation for extremist groups to recruit new people. And these kinds of attacks are used basically to make noise, to show that there is a challenge to this disrespect, and to get the young people to go towards these groups. This is very dangerous. It requires much more education of our own people about our religion. In the book of Quran, which is our holy book, I have read in several places that God has said to the Prophet, if somebody disrespects the Quran or you, just turn around and take a distance from these people. God is the person. God is protecting the Quran. There's no need for us to get into. So, but these things get lost in this translation. Our own people should know that it's not because of an Indian second-rate politician is making a negative comment about our religion that we should get all excited about it. Our religion has its own protections given by God.
Right, absolutely. And Mr. Faradi, very valid points pointed out, of course, with reference to how some irresponsible statements can have the ripple effect of what has happened. And then, of course, the kind of mechanisms that should exist irrespective of whatever statements are made, so that we act in line with the religion. I'd like to now come to Brigadier Saad. When we look at the situation currently in Kabul with the Taliban regime, and then, of course, the threat that exists from Daesh and other sort of groups as well within Afghanistan, this is, of course, something that not only the Taliban regime is dealing with in Afghanistan, but also the spillover effect is also something that Pakistan is concerned about as well. Right now, with the current regime in Afghanistan, how do you see the kind of measures or actions that can be taken with regards to overcoming Daesh, and whether or not the Taliban currently in power have the capacity or the will to deal with this?
Thank you very much. The Kabul regime of the Taliban at this point in time faces three major challenges. One is the humanitarian crisis looming over the horizon, which can cause great devastation. It's already caused great devastation. The other is the political inclusiveness, which is lacking in Afghanistan, and one community is not ready to accommodate the other communities politically. Within the organization itself, there could be some non-Pashtuns, but it needs to be politically inclusive to legitimize itself. It must have a legitimate constitution also, which legitimizes the regime. Now, that is to one side. We come to the main crux of the problem, which you just now discussed, and the major challenges, the security challenge that the Afghan Taliban face as of today. Now, the major reason is that there are a number of terrorist groups now operating on the Afghan soil. Some of them are with the consent of the Afghan regime, some are not. For example, Al-Qaeda, TTP, IMU, ATM are there because they are aligned to the Taliban, and they've been fighting with them against the occupation forces of NATO and the United States. Now, there is another very dangerous organization called the Islamic State, or Daesh, as it is commonly called in this region. Now, Daesh is an organization which does not understand reason. It will kill for no reason. They will kill innocent people. They will kill innocent children also at the same time. The Taliban do not have the capacity to deal with it because just the mere use of force, sending fighters here and there in a terrain which supports insurgent groups, will not help them. Now, there are other kinds of intelligence required. You require resources, which the Taliban regime does not have. You require human intelligence to spread around. For that, the resources are lacking, and the technical, people who are operationally, trained to look for them in an area that is the human intelligence. They also lack that. And the most important is the signal intelligence. Well, the signal intelligence is ground-based, or it is based from above, from satellites, to listen to chatter, to listen to these people. Now they lack that. Now they don't have the resources to do it. They lack the ability to control this organization. Yet they are not ready to extend a hand to the rest of the world to help them out from this challenge, which is posing a security threat to the entire region. It is not only posing threat to Afghanistan, it is posing an equal threat to Pakistan also. And here too, in Pakistan, since we use religion for political purposes, so Pakistan has become also a very fertile ground for organizations like Daesh.
Absolutely. I understand that, of course, that the kind of concerns that Pakistan has with regards to the situation. But Farrukh, when we talk about the kind of threats that exist, there's, of course, also the mention of the Taliban regime currently in Afghanistan and the use of Afghanistan's soil against the country. Right. But equally so, we've seen that there are a lot of issues that the Taliban regime is already dealing with, or the threat that exists there is a challenge for the Taliban regime as well. How much can we, in terms of our security, measures that we need to take to protect our own people, needs to rely on that?
Right. Sana, I think at this moment Pakistan has the capacity, and Pakistan is fighting terrorism on its own soil. Right. But there's something very interesting that was said earlier, and I agree. When you talk about the way Daesh has been conducting its terrorist attacks, it doesn't need any excuses to do whatever it wants to. In the past, they have killed children, they have killed women without any kind of rationale, without giving any kind of justification. But there is something very interesting that you have to see. This time, claiming responsibility, they gave an excuse. And that excuse is punishing India. At this moment, I think Narendra Modi's government should be the first to actually come on record and thank them for changing the context. Why am I saying this? Because there is a very subtle but important relationship between terrorism and Islamophobia. If you read any good book on war and terror, particularly Spencer Ackerman's book, Reign of Terror, at that time you'll see that every time terrorist attack took place, some Islamophobe actually took advantage of that and changed the context. Change the context from how Muslims are treated to how Muslims pose a threat. Again, the target that was chosen is Sikh community, which is quite amenable to the Muslims overall. I keep on saying that they are also our brothers. They hail from the religion was founded in the territories that are part of Pakistan.
Right.
And those, by virtue of that, and because they also believe in one God, we have the same monotheistic value system, right? At that time, attacking them actually, drives a wedge between Muslims and Sikhs, and that also benefits the paranoid Indian government. So at this moment, the Indian government should be thanking Daesh because there seems to be some kind of connection that always helps the Indian side, that now they can actually change the discussion from Islamophobia that was manifest on their screens, their provocations, and now they can talk about how Muslims are posing a threat to other communities.
Absolutely, and I understand the kind of nuances you're pointing out, and I hope that there are people who can understand that and view the situation perhaps more critically than it seems to be on the obvious end. And I wanted to explore this a bit more, but we have to go on a short break. We'll be right back and we'll speak about this more. Welcome back to the debate, and before we went on the break, we were talking about a very important point that Farrukh has raised. Farrukh, before I begin, you had to add something to that.
I just wanted to actually clarify one point that I kept on looking at the screen and I could see you. I thought that you are speaking.
But, I have this effect on people.
Yeah, but regarding what I was saying, I'm not implying that there is any essential connection between the Indian government and Daesh. But if something keeps on happening repeatedly, and if Indian government gets the benefit out of this, you have to start asking the questions. Why is it that Daesh always attacks those people that actually benefits India? Why is it that they attack people at the time and such communities at the time when Indian government is really at bay, especially when it has the image problem in all Muslim countries which also have a terrorist problem. So this seems to be some kind of trick to change the context. This is my humble submission. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this in further detail with our guests as well. But Faisal, you had a question to ask.
Yeah, not a question, but I wanted to, hail Brigadier Saad when he pointed out three challenges, main challenges which are being faced by today's Afghanistan. And of course, the first challenge was humanitarian crisis, and that is a challenge that must be shared everywhere, because this is the main challenge that is affecting the other two as well. Why I say this? Because around 4 months ago, we had a statement coming by Ken McCallum, who happens to be head of MI5, and he said that ISIS Khorasan is employing the vulnerable people with from $280 to $400 per person. So it means that the humanitarian crisis, it is leading towards people, vulnerable people, joining ISIS Khorasan just because they want to live on. And if we talk about the second challenge which he highlighted, it was obviously political inclusiveness, which still we can't see it. And if we look at the kind of NDS the previous regime had, of course NDS still has very good relations with the other sort of intelligence agencies that were working out there, and still they can be used and they are being used. And I would say that RAW and other few of the names of the spook agencies, they must be in touch with them and utilizing them for certain gains, which they are of course gaining it. And if we talk about the third one, security challenge, we have always been seeing that Afghanistan has always been considered as a place from where you can easily run a proxy, because you can find people out there who can work for you. And we saw that Indian RAW, it had for nearly 15 years engaged Pakistan on the Western Front, and we know and we have given details on it and evidences regarding it, that the doctrine of defensive offense, it was in a full-fledged operation was being conducted by India, being in Afghanistan. And right now we highlighted it yesterday as well, and we are highlighting it once more, that the NDS RAW nexus and their sources who were in the hibernation for nearly a year, they have started popping up their heads once again. And in coming days, of course, we would see them more and more. And now when the Taliban, they have started blaming everything on ISIS Khorasan, they need to look around once more, because they will find that a new proxy is being run within Afghanistan under the umbrella of NDS RAW nexus with the RAW's money. And in Afghanistan, all of these incidents, unfortunate incidents against the minorities and against the schools and all of these things, they will be conducted in coming days, and it would be blamed on certain others. But of course, it has everything to do with RAW and NDS nexus.
Absolutely, and we will see and talk about that further in detail in terms of what the Taliban regime can actually do with regards to that, and then of course what Pakistan can do with regards to foreign elements, with regards to counter to terrorist activities. But what I want to also come back to is the issue that we were earlier discussing with reference to how Daesh perhaps has used the justification of their actions because of the fact that this is something that something was said against the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and because that was unacceptable, this is the kind of retaliation we have. And Mr. Farhadi, earlier when you were talking about that, you also spoke about how this is going to increase perhaps the amount of recruitment that Daesh or other such groups can actually have with regards to such statements that have come out. And I understand that, but in a larger concern, maybe not just in terms of people getting recruited in such groups, but in terms of how they perceive such groups as well and understand how these terrorists operate. And then, of course, by extension, understand the religion itself is obviously also problematic and has an impact. When we connect the kind of activities that are going on and the justification that's been given, this, of course, also harms the understanding of religion across the world. And that, of course, sort of has a dampening effect on the activities of these groups.
And sir, can you explain to me why is it hurting or killing own citizens, fellow citizens, and in the name of taking revenge from another country? How does that make any sense?
Well, if you look at Daesh, it appeared in Iraq after the Iraq War. Basically, it was a reaction against more political clout in Iraq by the Shiites, and other organizations really created Daesh in this case. And then Daesh now is in Mali. If you check the news, 2 or 3 days ago, they killed about 30 people in Mali. So they're everywhere. It's a group that is manipulated by other intentions and groups, and it's a group that really does a great disservice to the name of Islam. And this is why I think one way of fighting them is for us to invest in mosques and with government funds, with development funds, by giving to our young people more information about our religion, that in fact the light that Islam sheds is much stronger than what an Indian politician can say and then excite a few people who are on the margin and with groups such as Daesh, which are manipulated in fact. So, Farrukh, you were asking about how can people kill their if it's from the same country. They are indoctrinated. Daesh kills the Shiites. So they were created against the Shiites in Iraq for political reasons, but it went too far. And in Syria, in Mali, and in Afghanistan, their fight is against the Shiites, their fight is against the Sikhs, but also they have attacked the Sufi mosques, the people who are more into devotional Islam, because they have been indoctrinated that Sufi Islam is not proper Islam. So it's a question of indoctrination. I think we have a better time of investing our efforts on how to enlighten our own people that in fact Daesh is a political group, it's a activist group, but it uses religion to justify what they're doing.
Right. There's a reason why I asked you about this issue, right, sir? My concern is that these, statements that or justifications mean nothing, and they actually want to kill people, and that's why they go after the most vulnerable people. Is it not about time that we start filtering out their justification for such action? Because that means only that is meant to confuse people and nothing else.
Yes, there are groups which are manipulated, actually, these groups. And this program is a very important program. I hope a lot of people can listen to it, because it sheds a lot of light on the motives of Daesh, which are political motives to begin with. But also in countries such as ours, where it's easy to excite people about religion, then they draw these things. But the best defense is information. It's religious information about Islam, which is really a religion of peace. And the OIC can do a lot on this. It can have information programs, it can have development programs, it can have educational programs. And I must say here that what the former ambassador, if he is former, Munir Akram, did at the United Nations to go against hate speech and speech that goes against, the beliefs of Islamic religion is very valuable. And I heard that the Pakistan Chargé d'Affaires yesterday or the day before yesterday spoke again about this at the UN, which is very good.
Absolutely.
We have to.
It is.
We have.
It
We
is
have to leave
extremely
this
important.
combat
But
in our
I also want to just talk about what you earlier said in terms of the distinction being drawn with reference to these organizations in terms of them being a political entity, and then of course the religious matters or statements that come out from them. But again, Brigadier Saad, religion and politics and the kind of lines, the blurring lines that we see between the two is not just something that we see in terms of such extremist groups. It's present in different societies and different cultures, in the political institutions, and the political leaders and parties, the way states are, and the way different communities and nations interact with each other, how bilateral relationships are formed. There's so many things that are impacted by the blurring boundaries of the two. How are we even going to begin to separate that and then hope for people to be able to achieve that sort of distinction when dealing with terrorist organizations?
And sir, in the middle of these blurring lines, there is the matter of governance that you also pointed out. If the Afghan Taliban are not capable of ensuring good governance and ensuring that they are inclusive, then what is the antidote? What is the solution?
We just discussed Daesh as a political force. I don't think so. It's a political force. It's an ideology. It does not have any central organization as such where people sit and they issue directives to the various groups. It's an ideology. Mr. Baghdadi is dead and his organization is dead. But it still operates, just like one of your guests said that it is in Mali and they killed a number of people. It's in Afghanistan, it is in South Asia, it's in Pakistan. Some people subscribe to that ideology. Now, these terror groups, what they do is they adopt the ideology of the IS and start calling themselves the IS, and they exploit local issues. It's not a central issue that they exploit. They exploit local issues. For example, in the Levant, they would be exploiting the issues in the Levant. In Africa, they would be doing something else. And in Afghanistan, they are up to something else. So what we can do is that we need to come up with a superior ideology. You can't defeat it through the barrel of the gun, and there is no solution. The barrel of the gun at times loses its effect, and the law of diminishing returns starts coming in. What you can do is defeat it with a superior ideology. Now, can we give a superior ideology with the present level of corruption that is going on, with the level of misgovernance that is going on, with the level that the people are facing the difficulties in life? There's no delivery. People are sick. There's no medicine. In all these areas, I'm not talking about any particular area. Wherever these people, take root, you will see that there is a lot of, alienation of the people from the existing society. So there's a conflict between the society and the state in that area. And that's what these people exploit. Now, unless we come up with something better, that we deliver better, we give better, we feed the people, we give them health, we give them education, then you can wean away the people. But if you think that, you can just do it with the barrel of the gun and without doing anything else, I think such organizations will flourish. Yes, there are other issues that I'll refer to.
Is it not about governance then? If you give good governance to Afghan people, then terrorism will not function there.
Yes, I said that, that unless you deliver that superior narrative, I had given a number of facets of that.
Fahadi
superior ideology.
Yeah, Fahadi Saab, as Brigadier Saad sir has rightly pointed out that it is an ideology. ISIS is an ideology, and today's Afghanistan, of course, it is faced with the challenge of ISIS Khorasan, and we know that Taliban were already fighting against them in Nangarhar, and it was long before Americans left Afghanistan. So now, as he has mentioned that there should be a superior ideology that can counter this ideology, do you think that the political ideology of Taliban is capable enough to obviously counter the ideology for ISIS Khorasan?
It is not, and also this problem is not limited to Afghanistan. It crosses the border into Pakistan. The TTP people, if you look at what they want from the Pakistani government, all the requirements that they have in their negotiations, it's not very far from what Daesh is asking for. So, at the bottom, all these groups are extremist groups. Their names are different. But I think their concerns have to be addressed to some extent. And on the other hand, other development activities and information activities and should be conducted in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, etc., so that the young people are not attracted to these groups, even if they offer $400 a day. Because once the information is in the hands of the young people, our young people are very thirsty about information. If they have the information that these are ideological groups, yes, political groups, whatever you call them, but in fact, they're manipulated groups. And they manipulated the young people also. And they manipulate the people who go and explode themselves and want to fight for their last day of life. So, and this is not really part of Islam either. Islam is a religion of peace. And this is why we need to ask for more help from the OIC, from Saudi Arabia, from the UAE, the countries that have the wherewithal.
I'm really glad, sir, that you mentioned OIC. Last time when OIC foreign ministers met in Islamabad, you were with us in this program. At that time, they had actually decided that they are going to constitute a body which is going to go and convince the Afghan Taliban about the virtues of inclusive governance and actually allowing girls to go to schools as well. Since then, we haven't seen substantial progress. Why is it that OIC has not been able to convince them or hasn't even started?
Mostly because the Taliban are a very closed group, very closed group. This is the effort that we have as Afghans. Every day on TV, we engage them in discussions in groups with Taliban. But unfortunately, we are not with Mullah Hibatullah on the debate. We are not with Mullah Hassan Okhund with the debate, you see. The upper tier of the Taliban don't talk to anybody. They just talk to the Taliban. We have not been able to engage them. It's almost the Taliban themselves need to help us, other Afghans, to go and challenge their leaders on some of the topics, such as the closure of the girls' schools. I have said on Afghan TV to the Taliban, and they have responded. I have said, Taliban, you have done the work of evil. You have darkened the name of the religion of Islam in the world by closing girls' schools. Now, everybody who meets a Muslim anywhere in the world, 20% of their mind thinks that these guys are for closing girls' schools. They have done a major disservice to the way the Islamic religion is seen. They have done a major disservice to the investments that the OIC has done over the past 30 years in education.
Do the Taliban actually understand and accept that?
Well, yes, they get, I've told them in interviews in front of them, and they say, yes, but it's also our tradition. I said, okay, then don't do it in the name, don't close the schools of girls' schools in the name of Islam. If you close it in the name of your traditions, you can say it's in the name of our traditions, but linking this to Islamic faith, closing schools, asking women to, the governor of Kabul was in a debate with me. If you have 1 minute, I'll tell you this story. The governor of Kabul is a man who is 32 or 33 years old. And he has said he doesn't want to see any woman in front of his office that doesn't have a covering on her face. And I said to him, I said, you're a younger boy. Let me ask you, did you fast 30 days during the Ramadan? He said, yes. And I said, didn't the fast help you or teach you that you are not supposed to look at women in a certain way? The hijab is also for men also in the way they look at women. If you have not learned this during your month of fast, it means that you have just fasted for nothing. Because the philosophy of fast is to understand all these things. And yes, God has created women very beautiful, but if they come in front of you and you have the hijab in your mind, in your eyes, You're not going to look at somebody's sister or somebody's mother or daughter in a devious way. This is what you need to learn. And this young man didn't have an answer because nobody had spoken to him about the philosophy of fasting this way. They have just, what they have learned is women should stay at home and they should cover their face and not go to school. So their knowledge of religion is very limited. It is very limited by the madrasas they went to, and it's very limited by the way they want to establish an Islamic system. Their government has done nothing in Islamic finance, in financing loans for women, for the poor. They have done nothing for the widowers.
So
and the first thing they have done is just go and...
So basically, sir, nothing works. Inducements don't work, arguments don't work, punishments don't work, and people are bound to suffer.
Yeah. Brigadier Saad, sir, one last question from me for you. But consider me your student, and I have a question for you. Very recently, I saw a picture which I still have with me. It was someone who used to be very close to and was considered as a right hand of Mohib, and he was very close to Amrullah Saleh as well. He was meeting tier 2 leadership, one of the tier 2 leadership of Taliban very recently, and right after that we saw that the Indian delegation, it landed in Kabul, and they met with Taliban. Obviously foreign minister, interim foreign minister, they met with him, and right after that we started seeing once again that obviously things were getting worse within Afghanistan, and there are certain sources who claim that with time the NDS sources, they have started mending their relations with ISIS Khorasan as well. And ISIS Khorasan, as you have earlier mentioned, that they are quite close to obviously IMU, TTP, BLAs. All of these terrorist outfits, they get facilitated by ISIS Khorasan in Nangarhar and Kunar province. So should I be looking at a new sort of a proxy which is going to be hot very soon in Afghanistan, and it will be affecting the whole region?
From within Taliban?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing is that Afghanistan, whether it's ruled by Taliban or anybody else, it is none of our business to tell them how to conduct their bilateral relations with other countries. As long as it is not used against Pakistan. Now, if we have proof that that has been used against Pakistan, then we can come up with some, the way we talk to the Taliban. The other is that we have to protect our own country. Nobody else is going to protect our country. I can't ask the Taliban to protect my country. I must protect my country. Now, these thuggish groups that we are talking about, these terrorist groups that operate, now they don't have the linear boundaries between themselves. So you would see the TTP, which is at times talking to the Taliban, will also be talking to the Daesh, and it will be talking to the Atom also. They will be talking to the Al Qaeda also. So these groups, you cannot, really decide as to which side are they. Even before this, the Taliban regime came here, the TTP was operating in Afghanistan, and the TTP was operating with Daesh. It was operating with the Taliban, and it was operating with the Afghan NDS, as you say. So the lines get blurred in such situations.
Right. Thank you very much, Brigadier Saad. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for. And thank you very much, Mr. Tariq Farhadi, for joining us as well and being a part of the show. Always a pleasure. And of course, the situation with regards to Islamophobia and terrorist threats, both within Pakistan and elsewhere, continues to exist. But what, of course, is important that we keep on trying to understand the real issue, and hopefully that will pave the way towards a real solution to these problems. Thank you very much for watching the debate. We'll see you tomorrow.